Is Karen online?
Yes, her name's up there.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
I'm here.
Jane just logged on too.
Hello there.
Hello.
So
Jake's there.
what about
Yep.
Tom?
I'm here
Tom's
too.
there,
I'm there.
Oh, there he is.
Wayne's there.
Okay. Then we are ready. Good afternoon. We call to order the study meeting of the West Valley City Council. We note that we have a quorum present. We have all council members participating. So with that, we'll get started. We'll go down to our minutes of October 19th. A motion on the minutes.
Move to approve those minutes.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or? Oh, okay. Must be good the way they are. Then without objection, the minutes will be approved. Hearing no objection, the minutes are approved. Unanimous. Let's see, then reviewing our regular agenda for later tonight. There have been no changes I've been made aware of. Any questions you have on the agenda later tonight, clarifications? Hearing and seeing none. On we go. New business for tonight. Let's see. We're going to consider application SMI-5 2021 filed by Mike Garza. Final plat approval for a two-lot subdivision, 3588 South, 5450 West. And Mr. Lehman must be the one going to present. I see his picture there. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Steve Lehman with the Planning and Zoning Division. This request, as mentioned, is a minor subdivision. Mr. Mark Garza, property owner, is requesting final plat approval. So we have some illustrations to get you familiar with the property. So many of you are familiar with 5450 West. It's a relatively rural street, very limited public improvements. There are some larger pieces of property, and this is one of them. It's just under a half acre in size. And the request this evening is to subdivide this piece into two lots. I should point out that this was a development agreement was approved by the council when the Erin Hills development to the west here came in for frontage reduction. Each of these lots is 66 feet in width as opposed to the typical 80 feet. That was granted by the city council when Erin Hills development was reviewed and approved. The next slide just shows the property. It's difficult to see what's on the ground because of the tree coverage, but we do have a couple of illustrations from 5450 West to show you. The next slide is looking to the northwest on the subject property. This is one of the lots just beyond the trees there would be the actual lot. The next slide shows straight west. So this will be one of the lots for a new single family home. The next slide is the existing single family dwelling that is located on the property currently. As you can see, it's in pretty poor shape. In fact, I believe there was a police training exercise on this property some time ago. We've expressed to the developer the need to resolve this home and demolish it so that it does not become a problem. He is under contract getting that taken care of, so we hope to see that come down shortly. The last photo that we have for you is just of the north side of that existing home. The home there off to the right with the yellow and orange is the home on the adjacent lot. And the last illustration that we have is of the subdivision itself. There are two lots, as I mentioned. Although the property is zoned R18, these lots are approximately 150 square feet. So they're relatively large, about 140 feet in depth with 66 feet of frontage, as I mentioned. And that is our report.
Just a clarification, Steve, you mentioned the frontage was changed. When was that done and how much of an area did that affect? Other than this property and the
Yes.
other?
This property was actually associated with the project of Erin Hills, which is developed to the west. That property owner acquired this land in that transaction. And when they came before the city council to rezone the Erin Hills property, they requested a frontage reduction for this particular property that you're reviewing this evening. The requirement in the R18 zone is 80 feet of frontage, and a reduction was granted to 66 feet for each of the lots.
Okay. So it just applied to this piece of property?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. That clarifies it. Thank you.
So Steve, because that reduction was already accomplished, it looks like there's no ask with this application. It's just purely administrative. Is that correct?
That is correct. The development agreement allowed for the reduction in frontage and stipulated the provision in the ordinances regarding housing requirements and so forth.
Not hearing any other comments. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to our next item on our agenda, which is such a heavy loaded agenda. Make sure I don't miss anything. Communication for Justice Court. Okay. Not very many people back there. There's not much on the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. You guys hear me?
Yes.
Not too close. Okay. Okay, so this is my first report on the Justice Courts. As you know, when I was named acting city manager, part of the duty of that is the Justice Court. You might recall the reason that the Justice Court sits under that department head, whatever that title is because it can't be technically under the city attorney's office for both conflict reasons and administering the indigent defense contract. And so I was even doing at least that part of it and some justice court things prior to this. So it was somewhat of a natural fit. As you know, we have Kevin Nudd over in the justice court as the court administrator. And he is very, very good at that job and really keeps things quite in line. As you're also aware, there are a lot of things about justice courts that we don't control by state law. Many of those things are controlled at the administrative office of the courts or under the Supreme Court jurisdiction, whether that's the amount of money that we pay our judges or retention of the judges. Those kinds of things are governed by the court. Interestingly, during COVID, and I'll report on some of this, the operations at the court are also governed for the most part by the Supreme Court and through the administrative office of the court. So they decide when masks are being worn and when they aren't. They decide when in-person court functions are happening and when they're not. And so they do that by court order. They issue those orders through down to the various courts and to the justice court, and we oblige and do what they say. So I'll give you a report on that as well. So you'll recall we have 2 judges, 1 court administrator who's Kevin Nudd, and then 16 court clerks. And let me just give you a little rundown of how COVID has affected the court. So back in March, about the same time as everything else in the world shut down, the court issued an order that they would shut down, but from a physical presence perspective, but that we were to immediately find a path forward to process cases and continue to work, but just do that remotely. As you'll recall and probably are aware, there were many hoops we had to jump through, and IT was really great to help as well. Many ways in which the court office has changed, not the least of which is no in-person, but when you think about how to administer justice in the appropriate ways remotely, all of those things become really interesting. So, under that order, we were able to convert to online functioning pretty quickly. We did have some phone hiccups that occurred, taking calls. The call volume there is very significant. So we had a lot of effort to get that corrected. But for the most part, we were able to continue to file cases and process everything except for jury cases. So you might imagine that function is both a function of the court requirements, but also constitutionally. In a jury situation, you have some requirements that are constitutionally guaranteed that fundamentally you really can't overcome with Zoom. And so the jury trials have been just put on hold. So normally, interestingly, at the justice court level, we might have a full calendar of jury trials holding that might be, let's say, 2 weeks long. So for instance, we might have a backlog on any given normal day of 12 or 15 jury trials. At the height of the pandemic, well, and let me also say, many of you have also heard this before, but the way that functions is typically the defense attorney and the prosecutor, when someone's requested a jury trial, they get to that date or shortly before that date, and those two parties get together and make a deal. And then there's no jury trial. That happens in more than 90% of the cases. So because we had a backlog of jury trials that became very significant at the height of the pandemic, we were in the 200 and 300 cases that were backlogged for jury trial, just sitting, kind of waiting. That's very common. We were not any different than any other court, as you might imagine. But what that did is there was no reason for the defense attorneys to converse with the prosecutors and make deals on cases. So our backlog just continued to grow and grow and grow instead of clear itself out in the normal process that would occur. So when we were able to get back to a medium level of participation at the court, which is where we sit now today. So there is a situation where we have half of our staff coming into the court half of the days and half of our staff working from home, and then we switch and have that happen as well. We have started jury trials up again in a very interesting format. The jury trials, all of the voir dire, so that's the selection of jurors. The initial selection is being held on Zoom. So let's say that we might have a jury trial where we've contacted 60 people to potentially sit on the jury. The judge will get on a Zoom with the lawyers and the 60 people, and they conduct voir dire. And as they dismiss those people very quickly and very efficiently, as you might imagine, as they move through that process, they get down to the jury selection. And then the judge says, okay, you've got 40 minutes to be here. Come on down to the courthouse and we'll see you when you get here. And that has worked. And actually, I think it has worked to rave reviews. I think people really like it. People really like the opportunity. Now, how do you couple that with the constitutional requirements that you still have in jury trial situation, right to face your accuser, lawyers who want to look the jurors in the eye, this type of thing? If we were going to carry this on long-term, I think all of those legal issues would have to be answered. But certainly it's working really well right now. The other interesting outcropping of that is, as you're aware, we're required by state law to pay the jurors. However, because of the methodology by which we're obtaining those jurors and getting them here, it came to our awareness that we were going to need to do that in cash. So we've now taken petty cash from the Treasury. We sign that all out appropriately, and we, as the jurors arrive there, pay them their, and I'm sorry, I'm not gonna have the number, $21 or something crazy like that. We have them sign, and we have all the protocols in place to be protective of that cash. But it was an interesting, again, outcropping of the pandemic, and I think demonstrates how flexible and really resilient the staff has been to figure those things out. And I will say, much like you heard me say about not homeless task force, I'm sorry, my hometown, pandemic has actually taught us a few good things over in the court. And I think that the administrative office of courts will rethink the way that they do things long-term, and obviously in the interest of justice and maintaining people's constitutional rights, be very careful about moving forward. But we'll probably see some changes in the functioning of the court long-term. We've recognized that, as well as, you know, you as a council passed not too long ago the purchase of the court next door, the court building next door. So we've got that under contract. And as we endeavor to retrofit that building for the court purposes in the next little while here, all of those new efficiencies have been taken into consideration. So fewer offices, more ability for even our people who are coming into the court to utilize a computer system as they come into the court, rather than necessarily having to interact with a clerk. They can do many of those things online. And so we've made arrangement for that to be available to them as well. So some of the redesign of the court building has also taken that into consideration. As for our case count and the operations, you will see as we go through the budget again this next year, all of the things that feed into the justice court have been slower during the pandemic, have been lesser during the pandemic. Just, I mean, take traffic, for example, traffic tickets, obviously with fewer people on the roads. During those real true lockdown months that we had, there were less tickets that came through the justice court. We are starting to see a breakup of the backlog of some of our other cases because we started jury trials up again. Those backed up cases have started to move out, and we're seeing a faster move through some of those. Otherwise, I will say that the court is doing well. I think of all of the very strenuous effort that they had to go through to ensure that the court was functioning and to make that work. It was really quite a heroic effort, and really appreciate Kevin's leadership there and his ability to see that through. I can answer any questions with regards to, yes, sir.
You said we have 2 judges. Are these JPs or ALJs?
They are justice court judges. So I guess you would consider them justice of the peace, but they're justice court judges, Judge McCullough and Judge Gilmore.
Okay, and so they do the infractions.
They do everything, and once in a while, they do everything below an A, and once in a while, still some A's.
Okay, so misdemeanor B, misdemeanor C, and infractions. Do they do small claims actions, civil actions?
They do some small claims,
Okay,
limited small claims.
but they're not doing our ordinance enforcement and things like that, or that's a different
Yep,
department?
that's an ALJ. So right now, Jody Knapp is our ALJ for ordinance enforcement, as you'll recall.
And do we have another ALJ for another like,
We have ALJs that do other things for us, like there's employment cases that sometimes hit an ALJ, and we have a different ALJ that we contract with for that. That's an out of house contract.
okay, so the justice courts, at what level do people have a right to a jury trial? Is it at a class C? Or
It's
is it-
this is a great question. And you'll remember I sat on the Indigent Defense Board for the state's Indigent Defense Commission. And that question, I would answer that question different than that commission would answer it. The commission would say anything. You need to provide indigent defense, and they have a right to jury trial for anything that hits that court. I would argue that it's anything that has and I'm not going to get the exact terminology correct, but it's anything that has the reasonable expectation of potential to take away your liberty. So jail time, so to speak. That would be a jury trial availability. There's a lot of conversation in the state right now about where that line actually is. I personally think I'm right constitutionally. I think that there's a lot of people that think it should be everything.
And then we have in Utah, in our constitution, a civil right to jury that's not in the federal constitution. But where does that come in? That doesn't apply to small claims cases, so.
Nope, it doesn't apply to anything at the justice court level. That's right.
So our entire backlog of jury trials is then criminal
Criminal.
trials.
Mhm.
And so those people are not going to be waiting in jail because they have a right to a speedy trial.
No,
We can't hold them.
yeah, none of them are in jail.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
let
our
me ask
judge-
you this. Do we need more justice court judges? Do we, I mean, we're gonna have a new building. Are we gonna be adequately staffed and supported and?
It's a great question, and I've asked that question as well as I've brought myself up to speed on I'm kind of the newcomer to the administration over there. I think we do have a very efficient court. Kevin, like I said, I have a lot of faith in Kevin and his ability to lead that. From the court clerk perspective, he keeps them running at 100% pace all the time, so they're very busy. From a judge perspective, I think that we're probably right-sized, although it's very interesting to understand that our judges are also running at about 100% capacity, in the sense that if you look at other justice courts, of course, we're second only to Salt Lake in cases, as always. And they have some more judges than we do. So we're not that far behind them. But sometimes judges, it depends on how efficient and effective your judges are. My personal opinion at this time is no, we don't need another judge for that purpose. I think that they both do a great job and are very efficient and effective. I think that could change. I think, again, there's also an argument from an indigent defense perspective, on both sides of that, how long both a prosecutor and defense attorney and of course a judge should spend on a case and time per case. There's a lot of talk in the state about that right now and setting some of those limits at the AOC. If they were to do that, we may be in a position where we're looking at another judge as well, but I don't foresee that on the near horizon.
And are our judges appointed by the Judicial Nominating Committee?
They're appointed, yep, by the,
And they go up for retention elections?
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
and like I mentioned before, we have no control of that.
any of that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. Very good.
Looks like
Thank
we're
you.
okay. Thank
Okay.
you. Council calendar. Is it next week? If we don't have a meeting?
That's correct. No meeting next week.
Well, now, wait a minute. Since there's 5 Tuesdays in November, are we having a fifth? Ooh, 6. Counting what? Count
I
what?
don't know.
We don't have a
Okay,
meeting
you can
scheduled
still
November
come.
30th.
So we will not hold a study meeting next week nor a regular meeting, but our agenda is pretty light, so I think it'll hold pretty well. Any other council calendar issues? Not hearing anything, then let's go to potential future agenda items. Anyone have anything they'd like to bring up?
I sent an email to all of you last Saturday when I finally got in the Maverick Center. There's a lot of houses on 3100 that I got to see a lot closer than I usually do when I drive by one. It takes an hour to get from 36 to Maverick. And I talked to Wayne about it, sent him an email and copied everybody. That might want to be if Wayne doesn't have anything tonight, it might be a good future agenda item to discuss, is how that ingress and egress works, because it only took me a half an hour to get home. And that included walking out of the Maverick Center. So
Now, I think Mr. Pyle did follow that up with some
Yeah,
information.
let's follow it up. Kevin Bruder has talked to me about it. I know they're working on it, but it might still be a good discussion item or something as a future agenda item.
And they had that north entrance open. I went in that way, which they haven't had open for a long time.
I didn't want to get out of line in case it was closed, because
Well,
Yeah.
you had
I
police
wouldn't have
officers
got-
there waving you in.
no, they didn't.
Oh, well, when I came. they
When
did.
I came by, they were standing there chatting and kind of looking at the traffic that was going by so slowly, and so you don't know.
I'm sorry you were delayed, but I'm glad you were able to bring it to the council, and that represents a lot of people that were probably in a similar situation. You weren't there by yourself, were you?
No.
Meaning there were other
It
cars?
was full.
It was
a
full.
Full
Oh, okay.
sellout.
Yeah. So
So-
probably a lot of other people were feeling the same way.
I was among the last ones to get in at 8 o'clock, but there were an awful lot behind me.
Right.
Because I got around to the usual gate 2, and they said, oh, lot is full. Can't get anybody else in here, so I had to go, they told me to go across the street, and as I was going down to 35th, make my U-turn to come back, I asked somebody in the middle, can I go in here? Well, try it. Lot was vacant back in the back part,
Oh,
so.
well, something, yeah, I'm guessing that everyone's comfortable with maybe making that a topic of discussion at some future point.
And it could
Yes,
be-
and I would just, oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, it could be a communication item. I don't think that we
Yeah.
need to pass an ordinance or any
No.
specific direction, but
No, I agree. Generally speaking, whenever we say potential future agenda item, it always implies first communication. Unless the council specifically and pointedly asks for more. So any potential future agenda, that's the way we've operated. So, yeah, good reminder. Just some.
So Mayor,
information. Yes, go ahead, Karen.
so the last time I remember this being a definite problem was the Elton John concert. And I would like to know what we learned there and if we implemented anything, or if we just didn't see it as being a potential problem and we didn't adjust anything.
Okay, that'll be included in the discussion.
Yes, please.
Okay, anything else in conjunction with that you want them to bring up? Okay. Then council, no other potential future agenda items.
Jake has something.
Jake,
I have one. Yep, I just wanted to raise to my colleagues engage interest in communication and discussion regarding the HB 411. I think that our city manager and staff have presented some great points, and their perspective is very clear and valued. But I also feel that because it still is a topic that we're all being asked about, and ultimately we're accountable to at least stating a decision as to why we took action or why we didn't take action. I'm personally in favor of a communication and at least a discussion on the record about that, and wondering if other colleagues on the council feel the same.
I think we probably ought to discuss it again.
I agree with you.
Me too.
okay, it's on. Okay, Wayne, if you'll plan on that in the future.
Yeah, absolutely, Mayor. In fact, we'll make sure, because of the shorter time frame of decision making
Yeah.
necessity there, we'll make it shorter as opposed to longer.
Yes. What is the deadline on that? It was in
It's
your
either
email.
January 1st or December 31st. It's right there at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, then on to council reports.
I just made mine.
Okay, any others? We're getting that time of year when things slow down a little bit with the holidays, but
Mayor, I don't
yes,
have a report, but I have a comment. I just want, maybe a question. I just wonder, Sunday night, they have a loud music in our area, 1300 West Parkway Avenue, and police, came out. I just wonder, can I take a look at that report? Is there any way Colin Jacobs, he can send out the report or something to us so we can take a look at that one? That's my question. No report.
This is Wayne. Of course, if you've got any question on a particular incident, we'll get you whatever information on it we can.
Okay, thank you.
I do need the specifics then again. Have you got the exact address and time?
I'm gonna get the exact one, but I think right now I got 1300 West Parkway Avenue, and about after 10 o'clock.
Okay, we'll see if we got
Yeah, thank you.
in the vicinity.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
Now, I think that is not a communication item, but rather just a request for information from a council member. Okay. Any other reports? Any other comments? There's no need for a closed session. So unless someone has something, then we're done.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn without objection. We will stand adjourned. Hearing no objection, we are adjourned.